limitations through engaged learning, and then apply these changes in the social systems where we live and work. Today, to enlighten us with his knowledge of psycho-spiritual maturation, we have with us Professor J.D. Kass, who is a leader in this field and who has imparted his knowledge to people from diverse backgrounds and different belief systems and faith traditions. So, to formally welcome Sir and all our honorable guests and our participants, I invite Professor Madhurma Pradhan ma'am, who is in charge of Happy Thinking Laboratory, to please give a welcome address.
Uh, Thank you, Dr. Manini, and sabhi ko namaskar. Very good morning to Professor J.D. Kass, and good evening to all the professors from Department of Geriatric Mental Health, King George Medical University, and Department of Psychology, University of Lucknow, and my dear participants. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all for this international professional virtual training workshop on psycho-spiritual maturation, a vital ingredient for sustainable well-being in individuals and society. The spiritual heritage of India contained in our scriptures like Vedas, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, and Purans indicate the earnest wish for sustainable well-being of individuals and all members of society. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani, pashyantu ma, kasyat dugubhave bhave is the most popular hymn and is a window of Indian spiritual heritage, meaning may all be at peace, may no one suffer from illness, may all see what is auspicious. This vision of interconnectedness of self with others and society is possible only by following a hard-earned path of self-transformation, self-transcendence, and mind management. But following this path may be difficult for many of us. Whereas a trained psychotherapist and a counselor can facilitate this journey and turn the upheavals of life as an opportunity for self-growth and psycho-spiritual maturation. We have immense pleasure that Professor J.D. Kass is with us, who is not only a well-known academician, a clinical supervisor and psychotherapist, but Fulbright specialist, the most prestigious educational exchange program for students and professionals. So personally, I welcome you, sir, from the core of my heart. And I'm really feeling overwhelmed and nostalgic in welcoming you in this virtual platform of University of Lucknow, who has just celebrated its centennial year. So this reminds me of the time almost 20 years back when I was preparing a proposal for a research project on promotion of spirituality for well-being of Indian youth. I searched the name of Professor Kass and his wife, Professor Lynn Kass, as the pioneer researcher in delivering a scale for measuring core spiritual experiences, that is in spirit. I was very lucky to meet him and his wife personally and attended the workshop in 2018. Please mute your mics. I learned a lot from him and from his very innovative, simple, and interesting exercises to understand how psycho-spiritual maturation and the life can be experienced. I extend a very warm welcome, sir, on this platform and accepting my invitation for conducting this workshop. I have deep sense of gratitude for you, sir. And we are confident that this will be an excellent opportunity to learn more about this vital ingredient of sustainable well-being in individuals and society, that is psycho-spiritual maturation. May this workshop be just a beginning of interaction of Happy Thinking Laboratory, Department of Psychology with Professor J.D. Kass in coming years. And we are honored to have you here, sir. Once again, a very warm welcome. I would also like to extend my deep sense of gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Alok Kumar Rai ji, who not only accepted the proposal of Department of Psychology for establishing this laboratory in University of Lucknow, but extended all support, financial support, as well as the infrastructure support for this laboratory. The vision of this laboratory is to empower thoughts of youths to understand indigenous notions of happiness, to build a world of peace, harmony, love by connecting science with spirituality. And we are very happy to know that this laboratory is engaged in conducting webinars, orientation programs for students, faculty development programs, personal counseling sessions, and workshop like this on regular basis. On behalf of our organizing team, I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to our Dean Academics, University of Lucknow, Professor Rakesh Chandraji, who despite being so busy, accepted our invitation to inaugurate this workshop with such a short notice. Our Vice Chancellor could not come, but I requested Sir, and he was very kind enough to accept our invitation and inaugurate this workshop. I thankfully acknowledge and welcome the team of Department of Geriatric Mental Health, Professor Shrikant Srivastava ji, Head Department of Geriatric Mental Health, KJMU, Dr. Nishamani Pandey, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Tripathi ji. Lastly, I would like to welcome all my participants who showed their enthusiasm for attending this workshop, and participants from different states of India, apart from UP, from Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Karnataka, Rajasthan, New Delhi, Gujarat, Himachal Pradesh, West Bengal, Jharkhand, Telangana, Punjab, Bihar, from every state all over our country. People registered for this workshop. And interestingly, the people from different age groups, from young generation to the older one, are interested in attending this workshop. So I extend a very warm welcome to all my participants. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to welcome such a galaxy of scholars and the participants across our country. Thank you, Dr. Manini. Over to you.
Now I would like to invite our Dean Academics, Professor Rakesh Chandra sir, to please formally inaugurate the workshop.
Good morning, Professor Kass. I'm delighted to see you here and not to miss the beautiful Natraj behind you. It's our honor and pleasure that we are welcoming you to this university on this very special occasion where a beautiful workshop is on the anvil, where Professor Madhurima Pradhan is organizing a workshop for psycho-spiritual development of people and looking at sustainable means for improving quality of life. As has been mentioned, the University of Lucknow prides itself of being an old university, and the Department of Philosophy and Psychology started together in 1921. So we are a very, very old university, and with the Departments of Philosophy and Psychology, we have had the distinction of having people like Professor Rajnarayan, who were equally at facility with the latest developments in psychological theory and practice as he was in the study of the Puranas and ancient Indian philosophy. As we all know, the idea of spirituality, of course, has its own dissenters. And in Indian philosophy also, there's a huge amount of diversity, from absolutely simple theories of the self, consisting only about the self as the physical self. There are theories which speak of the 5 sheets, from the Annamaya Kosh to the Pranamaya Kosh to the Manomaya Kosh and the Vijnanamaya Kosh and the Anandamaya Kosh. So you have absolute atheistic views, materialistic views, and views of the self which are entirely consisting of talking about the spirit. Also, there are views which talk about the gradual development of the self through the multiple ashrams, the tantric tradition, and multiple kinds of things. With all this history, of course, in the past many thousand years, we have had exciting engagements and development of psychology as a full-fledged scientific discourse, enormous developments in pedagogy. And I'm extremely delighted that we have here Professor Kass to talk to us about quality of life and improvement of human capability. The new model of looking at development across the world has been in the framework of what Professor Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum have called the quality of life, the capability indicators. So enhancing the capabilities of all individuals, taking us from the forces of necessity, developing ourselves to our fullest potential, looking at what Rabindranath Tagore spoke about in terms of human surplus. There are so many exciting avenues, and I'm sure just by looking at Professor Kass and looking at this beautiful image of Nataraj behind him, I'm so delighted and so hopeful that I'm sure that here we would have a scholar who would give us an enormous wealth of global learning from his long career. And I hope that we'll have a very beautiful workshop and a set of people trained to help us further. On behalf of the university and my own, I extend a very, very warm welcome to Professor Kass and all the participants in this workshop. And look at in two corners of the world from morning to evening. I hope we will have a beautiful, good life where we learn from each other. Thank you very much, Professor Kass, for giving us time. And I formally inaugurate the session. I also thank Professor Pradhan for giving me this opportunity. Of course, it has been a long day, but I think it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful occasion to be with. I hope I'd be able to join some of the sessions. Thank you very much. And I formally inaugurate this absolutely fantastic workshop, which is about to begin. Thank you very much.
It is not audible, Kirti. I don't know why.
We can't hear.
You cannot hear the sound which you.
Manini, you should sing.
But there was a sound which is not coming. I don't know why. Beautiful sound was there. This is. Can you share once again, Kirti? Please, if you can make the sound.
The music is not audible. I would just like to recite a prayer of Goddess Saraswati. Ya kundendu tushar har dhavla, ya shubhravasta vita, ya veena vardand mandit kara, ya shwet padmasana, ya brahma chit shankara prabhirtibhir, devai sada vandita, sa mam patu saraswati, bhagavati, nisheshadyapa. या देवी सर्वभूतेषु बुद्धिरूपेण संस्थिता या देवी सर्वभूतेषु विद्यारूपेण संस्थिता या देवी सर्वभूतेषु मातृरूपेण संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः.
Asatoma Satgamaya Soma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Loka Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, sarvesham swastirvatu, sarvesham shantirvavatu,
अच्छा,
sarvesham
ऐसे ही फोन कर रहे थे कि वो बोल के नहीं रही थी ना,
सर्वेषां
बिल्कुल नहीं बोली।
मङ्गलं भवतु लोका समस्ता
अच्छा,
सुखिनो
तो तुमने पूछा नहीं दीदी बोलती क्यों नहीं हो?
ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति.
Now, I would just like to request Dr. Nishamani Pandey ma'am from the Department of Geriatric Mental Health, KGMU, to please introduce our honorable resource person, Professor J.D. Kass.
Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Manini, respected Professor Chandra, Professor Kass, and all the dignitaries and participants. A very warm welcome to you all. The more you feed your mind with positive thoughts, the more you can attract great things into your life. By Roy T. Bennett from The Lighter in the Heart. With this quote, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Professor Jared D. Kass, our facilitator for today's workshop. Professor Kass dons many hats and has a spectacular academic career that makes him one of the best in his field. Since 2020, he is a Fulbright specialist in global public health and a visiting scholar at Benjamin Henry Institute for Mind Body Medicine in Massachusetts General Hospital. In addition, Professor Jared is a professor at Division of Counseling and Psychology, Graduate School of Arts and Sciences in Lesley University and clinical supervisor and psychotherapist at Behavioral Health Initiatives in Greenhouse Associates at Cambridge, Massachusetts, United States of America. He is also the principal developer and counselor for education specialization in mind-body behavioral health, which is person-centered, trauma-informed, culturally responsive, mind-body spirit psychotherapy, and has authored many articles and manuscripts, including one latest book on a person-centered approach to psycho-spiritual maturation, mentoring psychological resilience and inclusive community in higher education, which was published by Palgrave Macmillan. Ladies and gentlemen, initially he worked closely with Dr. Carl Rosers in the person-centered approach project for a period of 6 years, which was during 1975 to 81, if I am rightly quoted. And they established the significance of gratitude, unity, and unconditional love. He also observed that a significant degree of community behavior is responsible for honest self-expression, inevitable conflicts, restorative dialogue. Their study revealed healthy community benefits from non-verbal communication and awareness. With these observations, he started his journey of arts and meditation by discovering ways for sensory motor awareness, movement and dance, music, singing, personal artwork, and other contemplative works, silence, which provided regenerative energy to person centered communities. Further, Professor Kass tried to build up a culture of health, social justice, and peace where people from diverse belief systems can live, work constructively in harmony. He is a person who values the insights of science and each spiritual tradition which has contributed to his understanding of the maturation, goals, and contemplative practices. Professor Kass provides a model for improving medical, behavioral, social, emotional, and cultural anomalies by modifying the lifestyle and environment. He strongly believes that the nature is a curriculum for which he suggests fundamental to superlative paths. In 2018 August, when Professor Kass visited Lucknow, I learned from him a lot of things, including integrating the ancient knowledge of yoga psychology, which we always love to learn, with current trauma informed mind body approaches. He suggests and advocates establishing partnership between professionals, educators, and religious leaders and communities to use the spiritual traditions as a foundation stone for promoting individual and social health. He is doing commendable work in psycho-spiritual maturation and always ready to support his professional colleagues, students, and the community with a very positive mindset. His lectures and 2-day training seminars, which was attended by me, explained current developments in mind, body, neuroscience, behavioral medicine, and mental health practice with great reality, which I joined in 2018. We are delighted to have you, sir, amongst us to share. He will share his knowledge and experiences. So, not taking much time, with these words, now I invite Professor Jared Dicos to start the workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishaji. I would like to have 2 minutes from Dr. Manini. Before Professor Jared Kass start her session, I would request Professor Rakesh Chandra to give our memento of a certificate of honor from University of Lucknow to Professor Jared Kass. So, Ushaji, please help
Sure.
us. And another request to have a pic of with all video cameras on so that we may restore in our memory. So Dr. Mani, please assure that we have a pic and the memento is given from university to Professor Kass.
So, ma'am,
Hmm.
we share the memento.
Ushaji, please share the memento.
Dear participants, please open your videos.
Open your video so that we may have a pic after this memento giving ceremony.
Respected Professor Kass, this is a small token of deep appreciation. On behalf of the University of Lucknow, we offer this to you.
In platform, we can simply do this, sir.
This is very beautiful. Thank you very much.
We can clap. We
No,
should clap.
no, we can proceed further.
Platform. And so
Thank you.
you and the dais is all yours.
Thank you.
Ushaji, please stop sharing. Then we may proceed further.
Yes, if we can stop the screen sharing, thanks. Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Namaste. It is a great pleasure. It is a great honor to be here. It's wonderful to be seeing so many faces of wonderful people who I met in 2015. I think there's need to mute some of the other microphones, but I'd like to thank the dignitaries and Dr. Srivastava and Dr. Pradhan and Dean of Academics and the Vice Chancellor who wasn't able to be here, but I'm so appreciative for the support and especially to Dr. Pradhan and Dr. Pandey, who have been just already dear friends and dear colleagues, and really the work that you are doing in your institutions and the wonderful presentations that you just gave about the work in the Department of Geriatric Mental Health and the Happy Thinking Laboratory makes me think I've got nothing that I need to say today, because so much of what you are doing already is of such sophisticated and deep and important work. And it gives me great joy to be able to really listen to the ideas that are being proposed and to understand just the depth of the work that's going on already here. So it's truly an honor to have the opportunity to be speaking to you today. And a couple of things that I will just say in kind of introduction. First, I believe very strongly in the principle of reciprocity. We are all in reciprocal relationships with each other. So I'm honored to be asked to bring some expertise to the work that you are doing. But at the same time, I know that I wouldn't be here at this moment but for the work that you're already doing. And the way that we become a world community and build our knowledge together and build our skills together and work to break humanity's chain of pain is absolutely essential work that sometimes is not given enough time and energy, because oftentimes human beings think that there is no way to break the chain of pain. We're simply resigned to thinking that the world is the way it is and always will be that way, and that there's no possibility for our social systems and our individuals to mature and change. And one of the reasons that I think that that's true is because the chain of pain infects every aspect of our lives and social systems. And so it's not simply that we need just to think positive thoughts. It's that we need to look at the roots of our destructive thoughts, to look, as Dr. Pradhan's overhead said, the ways that we create pieces and build walls and divide ourselves from each other and divide ourselves from ourselves, rather than cultivating genuine peace and genuine harmony and genuine connection. But it's not easy. It does take work. It takes self-inquiry. It's not easy because one part of our mind did evolve for self-protection, for survival, for blocking others, for judging whether there's danger or whether there's safety where we can approach. And our instinct is always to protect. Our instinct is to pull away. Our instinct is to be angry. No, you're not going to hurt me. And those instincts have value. Mother Nature built them into our brains and our systems for a reason. And notice I'm purposefully using a term, Mother Nature, for the moment that could be understood either in a metaphysical or a spiritual way, or in an agnostic or a simply material way. Because part of what I've learned is that we shouldn't impose our belief systems on each other. What's wonderful about the Indian contemplative tradition, and what's wonderful about the world's contemplative traditions, is that they teach us to explore the deep questions for ourselves. That there are methods of self-discovery and self-exploration that can allow us to come to our own answers to why life is the way it is, how to break the chain of pain. And I think that we've entered a new phase of first honoring each other's traditions, recognizing that each of our traditions has wisdom, has value, and that as we learn to understand the connections between the traditions, the social sciences can play a very important role in understanding the elements from a functional point of view of what really are similar about the traditions, what bring them together, and to help us to move into not simply a language of each tradition, but an interconnecting language that helps us to understand the traditions more fully. And I hope that some of what I'll present today will help to add to that. The one other thing that I want to say from a point of view of introduction is that, and I certainly experienced and said this in 2018 too, there's an irony for me, a person from the United States, a person from a country that has had a lot of economic colonial power, that as a white-skinned Caucasian male who comes from a group of people which has had a great deal of social dominance within the world. And ironically, of course, as we all know, that 82% of the world are peoples of color. Only 18% are Caucasian background. And so there's an irony that I might be presenting to you to talk about some of the important aspects of the Indian spiritual tradition. It's backwards. But I'm both honored to be here, but my reason for being here is because of how much I owe to the Indian spiritual traditions. How much they've nourished my personal life, my family life, and the life of the students who I have been teaching in the United States, and helping them to understand the genuine, it's not even the right word, the true depth of Indian philosophy and Indian practices. And then to bring those ideas to bear with the scientific empirical tradition, which says, prove it to me, show me evidence. And of course, that's what I've tried to learn to do, with the reminder that we human beings live at the connecting point between subjective experience and objective experience. There is no objective proof that Devi Ma is a reality. That's always a subjective experience. But what we can gather evidence about is what happens to the well-being of individuals and groups who engage in a process of inner learning, subjective learning, that helps them to develop a larger worldview that includes the possibility of coherence, of a Devi Ma who is the ground of being, the structure of reality, and that the suffering that we experience is not punishment, although the rules of karma do teach us that we have to experience what we create, but that the suffering we experience is not simply punishment, it's actually a curriculum. It's actually a curriculum for what we need to learn for healing society and healing ourselves. And if we step into the challenge of treating life as a curriculum rather than chaos, or rather than in some way as chaotic, then our own experience of life begins to change. So with those words of introduction, let me share some overheads with you and sort of move us into some of the ideas that I think will be will be helpful. And let me again, I'm just beginning, of course, by once again, I'm setting my screen up here by thanking you for your participation. Namaste, Om, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, La Paz in Spanish, Salam, Shalom, to individuals from all of our traditions in all parts of the world. And what I'll start to say, I think, which will be perhaps a helpful way to begin, is to kind of, first of all, refer you. I appreciate Dr. Nisha's introduction and mentioning of my book, A Person-Centered Approach to Psychospiritual Maturation, because I won't be able to cover all of the details of this research or this book, today in a short talk. But I will just tell you that it reports research, it reports an effectiveness study of a self-inquiry curriculum that I call Know Yourself. And that it teaches individuals and groups to engage with life's crises, challenges, and stress as a multidimensional curriculum for person-centered psychospiritual maturation, both in self and society. That's an important idea, because one of the concepts that we sometimes have to challenge when we're thinking about karma is that oftentimes karma is simply interpreted as individual, but there's collective karma. Our world is filled with collective karma, the actions that we do as groups, as societies, that have an impact on other groups and other societies. And so it's very vital to recognize the collective aspect of karma in addition to any individual aspects of karma. And that's part of what we're, I think, shifting the framework. is away from simply the individual to the larger social systems in society, and to understand that the principles of karma operate there in the same way. But we need, therefore, as social systems and as a society, to step into the curriculum, to make changes together. And yet there is, of course, at the base of it, some learning that individuals do by developing a resilient worldview that I call confidence in life and self. And Dr. Pradhan was referring to some of the inventories that I've developed. And this one comes from the Inventory of Positive Psychological Attitudes, very relevant to the Happy Thinking Laboratory, the IPPA, Inventory of Positive Psychological Attitudes, because it taps, it measures an individual's confidence in life and self. So notice, not just confidence, not just self-confidence, but also confidence in life, that there's coherence and meaning when we step into our challenges and stress. And that at the same time, as we develop that resilient worldview, individuals can develop internal resources and skills to build a culture of health, social justice, and peace in their individually, in their personal and family relationships, and in their social systems. And to kind of build on what I've just been saying, sort of from a little bit of background point of view, that so much of what we think about as social scientists is dysregulated behavior that harms self and others. And of course, traditional models of psychopathology always focused on the individual. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with him. There's something wrong with her. But trauma-sensitive models in the 1990s began to help to broaden this focus to the extended family units. And so I'll call attention to a very well-known study by now by Vincent Felitti, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, looking at family and neighborhood experiences of adverse experiences and how trauma has a profound effect on the victim and on all of the individuals who are affected by trauma. And then more comprehensive trauma-sensitive models are now focusing on the systemic intergenerational causes of dysregulated behavior. And so we come to see that dysregulated behavior in individuals and groups is an effect of a self-replicating, very toxic, very pervasive dynamic, which I call, for kind of sort of simplicity's sake, humanity's chain of pain. And of course, this includes systemic inequalities, poverty, lack of education, intergenerational dysfunction in family systems, alcohol, drug addiction, all the things that we treat as psychotherapists and as teachers, complex trauma, neglect, sexual abuse, violence. It's hard almost to read a list like this that summarizes so much of the pain and so many of the difficulties that we know that people experience, and that we as psychotherapists end up as witnesses to such suffering. And they, of course, include racial trauma, sexism, ethnocentrism, heterosexism. I'm building it out here to the larger systemic issues, or a term that I think is very helpful, group-based social dominance hierarchies, which legitimize their own power and privilege, and which lead to intergroup conflicts, competitive nationalism, colonialism, and warfare, and that lodge themselves in individuals as deep levels of greed, of cynicism, and hopelessness. And we really can think of this as a revolving chain of pain, where traumatic stress creates a chaotic worldview in individuals, which leads them to high reactivity to events, which further exacerbates their stress-causing behaviors to themselves and to other people. And so what we're learning is that as humanity's chain of pain, this destructive intergenerational transmission of trauma grows in magnitude and intensity, and it does seem to be growing as our populations grow in magnitude and intensity, that it threatens to overwhelm our depleted healthcare systems. And that's why we have to shift our focus, not just from crisis intervention, but to prevention strategies that address root causes of these problems, including the negative impact of group-based social dominance hierarchies. And I'll stop, just to say for a moment that from the point of view of shifting to prevention strategies, one of the conversations that Dr. Pandey and Dr. Pradhan and I have been having is to approach things from a project called Healthy Aging, and to think about the relationship between healthy aging and the work of the Happy Thinking Laboratory suggests an important way to create a collaboration that I hope will grow into a larger Fulbright supported project that will allow us to really look at how to implement prevention strategies that address these root causes. Because as you're going to hear, one of the themes that I'll come back to a couple of times is that healthy aging begins in young adulthood, at least in young adulthood. Of course, it begins with children, but that's when their parents need to be involved already in healthy child rearing. And yet it's in young adulthood that young people, that we as individuals step into our own lives and can begin the process of breaking this traumatizing wheel of suffering. Now, there's a name for it, isn't there? Samsara. We know about this wheel of suffering, but we haven't always added the social scientific dimension of trying to understand, well, how does it replicate itself? We know that the mind is primary, and yet to break it down a little bit more, it disrupts 5 dimensions of functional activity in our own selves, in our minds, and society. And so we're going to talk quite a bit about these 5 dimensions of biobehavioral, cognitive sociocultural, social emotional, existential spiritual, and then an integrative worldview formation process. And of course, this will only be a summary, a distillation of these ideas. Time moves quickly in an evening like this, but we'll talk a little bit about ways that person-centered psychospiritual maturation can be thought of as a learning process. So it's relevant in educational institutions, a learning process with therapeutic dimensions that can help individuals and groups heal these 5 dimensions. So the presentation is going to explore, as we're already doing, some of these principles that are taught in the Know Yourself curriculum, and some of the self-inquiry practices from the curriculum that combine current mind-body approaches in psychotherapy, social justice theory and practice, and yoga psychology, the contemplative practices and philosophical concepts that are so deeply foundational and indigenous in India, and the applicability of these ideas in prevention and treatment approaches. So let's talk a little bit more and just kind of first do a moment of sort of summary of what these 5 dimensions are that get disrupted by humanity's chain of pain. So first, when I say biobehavioral, I'm referring to the neural and the physiological pathways through which people respond to challenges, stress, and perceived threat. And I began already with that. We are trained for a fight, flight response that's very protective when used appropriately. There are moments in life when we need to defend ourselves or flee. And we're very fortunate that Devi Ma, that Mother Nature has built into our neural pathways, our brain and central nervous system has built in ways for us to react with the immediacy of fight and flight. Sadly, of course, when individuals experience trauma, these reactions are accentuated even more because the protective fight response of stay away from me or else oftentimes turns into just absolute rage and destructive behavior that harms people. And the flight response turns into emotional collapse, numbness, dissociation. And all of these protective mechanisms are built into us and serve purposes at moments, can be useful at moments, but when they are our habitual response to stress, we lock ourselves in this fight, flight, intensive rage, collapse cycle that doesn't permit us to open our eyes and see, wait, there's more to life. More to this person that I'm encountering. I need not be afraid. I can approach. And so how to make sure that this biobehavioral system is operating in a healthy way, that we're using fight flight appropriately, but not habitually, is central to what Dr. Pradhan's introduction around the Happy Thinking Laboratory presented us with. And I know it's essential to what Dr. Pandey in the Department of Geriatric Mental Health helps to teach elderly individuals. And so, but even though that's a good start, we've got to take it deeper, because there's this cognitive sociocultural aspect of our minds and social systems. Because as we developed from an evolutionary point of view, we not only developed the fight-flight response, but the cognitive ability to distinguish between self and other. And all of our cognitive perceptions involve distinguishing between self and environment to determine what's safe, what's approachable. And absolutely fundamental to that sense of cognitive development over an long evolutionary period were our differentiation into different cultures, into different ethnicities, into different races, into different identity groups. And those become such a fundamental part of the way we think of the other. And of course, it's wonderful to affirm our differences. It's wonderful to have a multiplicity of cultures worldwide and in our countries, but we do truly need to learn to affirm them, not treat them as other, but instead to find the wonderful richness and similarities that allow us to be a multicultural human community, rather than accepting the cognitive schema and cultural identity narratives that condition us or legitimize group-based social dominance hierarchies in social systems. And a next level is one that we would call social emotional. Templates of attachment that shape our capacity for relationships, for constructive interpersonal relationships, with our families, in our communities, in our organizational networks. And then there's the level that so often psychology has avoided, the existential spiritual, because these are the templates of attachment. And notice that I'm purposefully using the language of attachment theory, which in another overhead we'll come back to again. But because I began to understand that, as I kind of sort of said at the beginning, that contemplative practice is not about believing in a higher power. It's using contemplative practices in a way that a person begins to experience herself or himself as relationally connected to the ground of being, to a ground of being. And so from the existential spiritual point of view, we look at the templates of attachment through which we experience and derive meaning from our relationship with the cosmos. And then the prefrontal cortex takes all of these different templates and integrates them together into a worldview. It's the synthesizing lens through which we perceive and respond to life events. So I want to take it a little bit deeper and show you the same version, the same 5 elements, but now to talk about, in the Know Yourself curriculum, some of the active self-inquiry that takes place. So quite often I'm asking students to reflect upon, write about, contemplate their state of being in each of these areas. So from the biobehavioral point of view, some of the self-inquiry questions are, what are your physiological responses to stress and perceived threat? Notice, perceived threat. Sometimes it's a real threat, but sometimes it's a perceived threat. Sometimes that perceived threat is a distortion. Learning to understand those distortions is essential. And so we learn to cultivate mindfulness, self-awareness, rather than reacting right away, to first become aware of what we're feeling, what we're perceiving, not to be simply reactive, not to let our limbic system hijack our evaluative system. So we learn to take a deep breath. We learn to cultivate the relaxation response, as Dr. Herbert Benson called it. And we also learn to cultivate robust heart rate variability. I'll explain that here for a moment, because it's a very important self-regulation skill. So I'm not going to put up all of the neuroscience overheads. I hope, Dr. Pradhan and Pandey, that we'll have some follow-up lectures, some follow-up discussions where we can just keep on digging into more and more of the details. But let me give you a very simple, important example of something that's so important. So some of you will probably already know this, but each time that we inhale, our heart speeds up a little bit. And each time we exhale, our heart rate slows down a little bit. People who are anxious very rarely engage in deep diaphragmatic breathing. They breathe in much shallower ways. I'll overstate this. I'm not doing Bhastrika, I'm doing just shallow breathing, like they breathe quickly and in a much more shallow way. And so we've learned, and so as a result, their heart rate variability is low. Their heart only speeds up a little bit and only slows down a little bit. But when we teach people to do deep yogic breathing, then the heart rate, here, try it with me just at this moment, just where you're sitting. Just start to breathe consciously. We won't do this for long, but just consciously. So take a deep breath in. And now slowly exhale. And a deep breath in. And slowly exhale. And one last time, a deep breath in. And slowly exhale. And of course, as we know, that simple exercise slows us down. It's such an essential intervention to teach people. Deep breathing, stop, take a deep breath. What's happening? But in fact, when we begin a practice of deep breathing, when we begin a practice of yoga, where deep breathing is practiced in the morning and in the evening, then more and more we develop the capacity, we increase our heart rate variability. Heart speeds up, heart slows down. And that difference between the speeding and the slowing is what's called heart rate variability. It's wonderful to realize that the lungs and the heart and the brain are so intimately connected to each other through the ventral vagal system of the ventral circuit of the vagus nerve. But what's important about that is that a lot of research is already showing that robust heart rate variability increases self-regulation skills, increases resilience. And in fact, there's been considerable research on infants in families where there's secure attachment, where there's unconditional love, compared to families where there's insecure attachment and conditional love or chaotic behaviors. And infants in families where there's secure attachment naturally breathe more deeply and develop higher heart rate variability, which becomes predictive of their well-being, psychological and physical, in their adult lives. It's remarkable to see that connection already beginning. So here we've connected concepts like breathing and heart rate variability with attachment theory, which is connected to the capacity for unconditional love, for the attunement between parent and child, for the attunement between teacher and student, for the attunement between therapist and patient. Absolutely important skills. So we've already started to just build out the model of where we're going with this, because then we can also look at, well, what are the cognitive schema that I've developed? We all have an inner critic. What are the cognitive schema that I've developed that tells me, I did that wrong, that wasn't good enough, you're not perfect, and that it initiates my own kind of self-distrust, self-hatred, or those people are different, they're dangerous, I don't trust them, without even having made an effort to get to know them. And so we can't simply just say, I'm practicing building my own resilience. I need to extend the self-inquiry to say, I'm looking at my own cognitive schema as they perceive individuals and other people. And then let me take it a next step to the social emotional. The kinds of questions we ask are, well, so think about your relationships. And this is quite confrontive in a sense, or these are deep things to think about. Are my relationships primarily transactional? I do something for you so that you'll do something for me? Is it business? Are relationships business? Or are they indeed a source of friendship, love, and intimacy? And one of the ways that we can really understand that and dig into that is during times when we're experiencing differences or conflict. I'm hearing a lot of videos, so I'm pausing for a second. Let's try and keep all of the audios on mute. One of the times that we can learn a lot about this is at a moment when we're experiencing conflict with others or someone else, or disagreements, because a good measure of the healthiness of our relationships are, do I feel empowered and safe to name a conflict or a difference? Do I feel safe enough, empowered enough to name a difference? And do I have the skills, and do my partners or my team members have the skills to resolve our conflicts constructively? Or do we kind of fall away from each other, experiencing anxiety or experiencing avoidance, or the confusion that comes with trauma that we sometimes call brain fog, or defensiveness or hostility as automatic responses? Our relationships are such an important part of our lives. And so we need to look carefully and use self-inquiry to explore them. And then I can take it to existential spiritual. Let's explore our way of being in life. And one way I would say this is, am I engulfed in the concerns and agitation of my daily ego? We all have a daily ego. We all have very real life concerns. We all get agitated. But are we able to catch ourselves in that engulfment, to see the way that the daily ego is suddenly controlling or ruling our lives? So Dr. Pradhan talked about mind management, and it touches me deeply that the work that's going on at KGMU and Lucknow University of Lucknow already understand this important concept that's taken quite a while to introduce within the world of psychotherapy in the United States. Am I engulfed in the concerns and agitations of my daily ego, or do I experience a wise core self that anchors me, whose internal composure helps me find purpose and meaning in my turbulent life? We all have the capacity, as your overheads have already shown us, to in fact experience a wise core self. And if we're atheists, we'll just assume that that wise core self is simply a capacity of the individual human being. But as we engage in contemplative practice and experience that wise core self, so often individuals report the experience that wise core self feels connected to a greater transcendent ground of being. So there's the subjective experience that allows somebody to discover for herself, himself, connection. No need to take these ideas on faith. Probably dangerous to take these ideas on faith. Let's teach people to investigate these possibilities so that it becomes an internal locus of existential meaning making. And then individuals can integrate in the prefrontal cortex a worldview that's more coherent. And so in that final dimension, we can ask people to reflect on, do I experience life as chaotic or meaningless, or as a coherent curriculum? Again, life's tough. Devi Ma is not an easy teacher. To just speak about Devi Ma as benevolent is wonderful. Yes, from the perfect springs the perfect. And when we remove from the perfect still remains. At the core, Devi Ma is unconditional love. She's the presence of unconditional love in our hearts. But when we're caught in the chain of pain, Devi Ma becomes the chain of pain. She is the manifestation of all that we manifest. So she's a tough teacher because she's not afraid to say, yep, the chain of pain is here. Let's solve it. I'm not going to come descending down from a mountaintop and save you from the chain of pain. I live within you. I am your Kundalini energy. I am your energy of psychospiritual maturation. I am your capacity to overcome the chain of pain. Consult me. Learn to become a channel of my wisdom and love rather than simply a channel of your daily ego. And so it allows us to understand life as a coherent curriculum for the maturation of self and society. And it even shifts our ability to face our own mortality. Do I face mortality simply with resignation? or with a confidence in life and self, a felt sense of secure existential attachment that allows me to approach even the end of this physical body with internal composure, with love and peace, knowing that my most essential self is the ground of being, is Devi Ma, and does go on. And so if I have been one beautiful tree in this life, I shall become yet another beautiful tree in my next life. And so it goes as we work together intergenerationally to break the chain of pain. So let me pause for just one moment and show you another different kind of overhead. Here are some pictures from one of my classrooms. And I just thought, we're a lot of ideas here, and let me just pause for a moment and just kind of give you a taste of a feeling of things. So for example, I'll first point out the middle pictures. Notice we're always in a circle. I always arrange my classrooms in a circle, which emphasizes not the social dominance hierarchy of me as the authority, but I'm there and I'm here and I'm teaching. I'm using my authority, but I'm hopefully not using my authority to dominate, because each of these individuals is a manifestation of Devi Ma. And I know that. And when you know that, you come to love your students and respect your students in a very important way that allows me to help to create sanctuary for each of them to discover their own capacities, to do their own growth, and to build community together. And so you see us here and you see them breaking into small groups, in discussions, sharing their self-inquiry processes, writing, drawing. My guitar is here, but it's kind of hidden. But singing. We had just finished a meditation session and a yoga session here. And here I was lecturing as I am now. We had overheads up on the wall where we were reflecting on ideas. So we build together ideas with experiential work, and we create sanctuary. We build community. It's important to say this, creating sanctuary. Classrooms shouldn't be places where we're saying, are you good enough? Prove to me that you're good enough, student. If that's the relationship that we're creating in our classes, then their experience in our classroom simply is a test. They're not experiencing it as a place where they can learn to build their own internal locus of meaning making and find their own capacity for creativity and intelligence, to find their own capacities for caring and love, and to heal aspects of the chain of pain that have wounded them and that keep them on the cycle of samsara. So we develop a different relationship to them as teacher or therapist, and similarly, they develop a different relationship with each other where they can build community. So now I'll quickly say, and it will be time to stop reasonably soon, but I'll just simply report that from the research that's reported in the book on person-centered spiritual maturation, that the students all did a lot of self-inquiry journal writing, self-inquiry essay writing. And so an important part of the research project was to read and use qualitative analysis to read their narratives and see evidence of growth. And during a one semester class, and we then compared that to a control group of students in another class who were comparable in terms of as a control group, but weren't engaging in the self-inquiry curriculum, that we saw that 68% of the student demonstrated some improvement in their behavioral change goals, that there was considerable growth biobehaviorally, but notice not 100%. And my reason for saying that is to say that these are the kind of results that you expect in the social sciences. Not everybody grows at the same level. Not everybody grows at the same time. And it's more important here to do this, if I could put it this way, on a pass-fail basis. I'm not saying you got an A because you grew 98%. You get a D because you only grew 60%. Oh my Lord, the person who grew 60%, that may have been momentous for that person. So we're not comparing what we look for, but from the social science point of view, realistically, let's read their narratives carefully. Let's really look for genuine evidence of their learning and growth, not just say, oh, everybody grew. No, let's truly, code our qualitative data and look for clear evidence. So I will say modestly that there was 68% growth in the biobehavioral dimension. There was 51% of growth on the cognitive sociocultural. There was 55% social emotional. And on the existential spiritual, there's 48%. These are challenging areas, but put it together, integrative worldview formation, 50%, 57% of the students showed growth in the resilient worldview, confidence in life and self. So for one semester, that's pretty darn good. Imagine if we were introducing young adults to this kind of growth over a much longer period of time. 2 semesters, oh my gosh. 3 semesters, oh my goodness. 4 semesters, you mean you're being serious about this? Imagine if we really did it that way. And so similarly, I'll show you just the same modest results, but very positive, that we then compared statistically the growth of the control group with the growth of the experimental group. And there, using a number of measures from the IPPA, the Inventory of Positive Psychological Attitudes, and from the InSpirit that Dr. Pradhan referred to, the Index of Core Spiritual Experience, we found that compared to the control group in terms of effect size, that the experimental group in that one semester grew between 15 and 22% more than the control group. And those of you who are social scientists know those are pretty good results and pretty predictable results. You're never thinking you're going to see 100%. Those are modest, but they suggest that we were measuring carefully, that we were only looking to, that we were truly kind of being thoughtful and careful about making sure that our results were accurate and weren't idealizing the results of the study. And so what I'll kind of say in conclusion, I think probably the best thing to do is say, so that here's two overheads that I can use as kind of conclusions for this model and what the research is showing and what it's supporting about the work that really we're doing at all of our institutions. So this one looks at psychospiritual worldview as a template for behavior. And the given is life. Life is the given. Life, constant change, inherent stress, humanity's chain of pain. We all experience life in these forms. And then we realize that there's a continuum between those who experience insecure existential attachment and secure existential attachment. And in the next overhead, I'll say even more about that term. But we could say that the attitudes and feelings, emotions, and cognitive schema of insecure existential attachment are characterized by I'm alone in the universe, as opposed to I am connected to a greater whole. That I am disconnected from others rather than I love and feel loved by others. That, again, insecure, that life is chaotic, meaningless, without purpose. Might makes right. As opposed to secure existential attachment. I don't know, life is a coherent process, evolving freely. We have the responsibility to be dharmic in our lives. And it's nourished, in fact, by dharma, by moral action. Or the conclusion, well, to survive, I must be brutal. I must dominate others for my own needs. As opposed to one famous saying from one of the spiritual traditions, if I'm not for myself, who am I? It's okay to have self-concern. It's okay to cultivate one's own well-being. But if I am only for myself, then what am I? Such a difference. And so we see that these worldviews produce different behavioral response. I'm sorry. I lost it there, sorry. A different behavioral response style, because insecure existential attachment, the research suggests, creates an agitated mind, reinforces the agitated mind, and reinforces destructive behavior, so that towards ourselves, self-soothing is health compromising, destructive to health, and unregulated. There are no self-regulation skills. And towards others, well, the best way to deal with stress is pass the stress on to other people. Reinforce the oppressive chain of pain. Where when we are living a dharmic life and experiencing secure existential attachment, we can approach life as a curriculum with a peaceful mind, with constructive behavior, where soothing is health promoting and self-regulating, and where we treat others with compassion and with social justice, and cultivate peace and work to heal the chain of pain. And finally, I'll say that we can also look at this, and this is certainly important with the two departments who are here, to look at psychospiritual maturation as from a developmental point of view, the developmental potential for secure existential attachment. And I'll note that, of course, these ideas build, first of all, on the developmental psychology, wonderful specialist Erik Erikson, who looked at the stages of life and talked about the importance in early life of building trust, and then autonomy, and then intimacy and generativity. The term that he used for sort of end of life, he called he called integrity. And it's a good term, but it's a little vague. And I'd always say, well, what exactly does integrity mean? And then I started thinking about Mary Ainsworth's wonderful work, along with John Bowlby, on attachment theory and the idea of secure attachment. And then I began to think about Paul Tillich's work in existential psychology and existential religious thinking, his important term, ontological insecurity. And I thought, well, we can't say that we're ontologically secure because life is changing all the time. But wait, we could be securely attached. We could be securely existentially attached. And so we can look at life as a growing, ever widening matrix for potentialities of attachment. Begins in family of origin, childhood, adolescence. It stretches into what I call community and work. We could call school, young adulthood, adult relationships. And the matrices of attachment then start to stretch to the cosmos itself, to the universe, to the universal. And it's not simply, of course, older adults and elders who ask, where am I going? Oftentimes it's a little too late to simply ask that question then. Much better to start early asking those questions. Who am I? Where am I going? And so here, Dr. Nisha and Dr. Madhurima, let me point out, I'm just absolutely emphasizing healthy aging begins in young adulthood. We need to integrate together our approaches to elders, our approaches to young adults. Our young adults, especially our psychology students, can become resources for working with elders, both therapeutically and conducting research. And there it is. There's the outline of the project that I think that we potentially could be developing. that could make wonderful use of young adults to begin their own psychospiritual development and to become good clinicians who know how to facilitate psychospiritual development and to work with elders on those processes as well as adults. So I won't go into more details there, but I'll simply say that it always revolves around self-inquiry in these 5 dimensions of self: biobehavioral, cognitive, sociocultural, social, emotional, existential, spiritual, integrative worldview formation that helps us cultivate confidence in life and self and secure existential attachment. So let me once again close by saying thank you for your participation. And I hope you'll allow me one last moment to stop screen sharing and to share one very small part of a song with you that I sing to my students. We weren't able to use experiential, we did some breathing. We couldn't use fun things like our peacock feathers as we did in 2018. But I will say that music and singing is always an important part. So here's the beginning of a song that I teach my students. I'll tell you, when I began my career, I was an elementary school teacher. I was very interested in the development of young children. And I quickly learned that if I wanted them to learn what I was teaching, I had to turn it into a song that they could sing along with, and it would deepen. Well, when I started working with adults, I started to realize it's the same thing. Sisters and brothers from every land, we're a human quilt with many strands. Don't you think the time has come to learn to live in peace? To learn to live in peace. So listen a little bit. A peaceful mind, it's the place to start. Know yourself, heal your heart. Hurt breeds hate, love brings peace. Break the chain of pain. Break the chain of pain. Love is the source that gives us life. Justice and compassion, it could end all strife. Love each other as yourself. Oh, we are one. We are one. Break the chain of pain. We are one. We are one. A little more. Oh, the pain that we've suffered, it can cloud our love. It can teach us to hate ourselves and others. But you're a child of the Spirit. You know you're worthy of love. Break the chain of pain. We can do it. Break the chain of pain. Last verse. Every river flows to the sea. Find your source, and you'll be free. Oh, it lives in you, and she lives in me. Oh, we are one. We are one. Break the chain of pain, and you'll learn we are one. Break the chain of pain, you'll learn we are. So I only wish that we were all together, singing together, but even here online, maybe with a feeling of building community, of creating sanctuary, of knowing that as we bring this knowledge and these skills to the world, that we can help our communities to break the chain of pain and build a culture of health, a culture of social justice, and a culture of peace. So, stay. Thank you once again for the wonderful opportunity to be presenting to you. So Dr. Pradhan, I'll turn it back over to you. I think we're not done. I think we're going to have some small groups, right? And or
Yes,
some
yes.
interactive discussion. So please lead the way.
Okay. So you can pick the participants randomly if you want, sir. There are a total 86 participants who are connected with us. So
Wonderful.
yeah, 86 are there. So would you like to make small group, or you will call the name, or what? How should I go about?
Well, I would suggest that just for a couple of minutes,
Yes.
perhaps you could just randomly put people in small groups
Yes.
so that everybody just gets, even just groups of 3 or something small, just so that people get a chance to speak with each other. Everybody's had to pay so much attention. A
Yes.
little time to just talk and speak would be probably good.
So, good evening, participants. I would like to say that you may form small groups or 2-3 people. Some are from Lucknow University, some are from other university, but I'm assured that you must be knowing each other, or you may like to connect with each other. And there are some participants who have joined from Brahma Kumaris, I know. So they can connect with each other. They can make their deliberations or observations about this workshop. The students of graduate classes, for postgraduate classes, from research classes, our subject groups, subject experts, they can form a group. So please, we can have a small break of 2, 3, 5 minutes maximum, and you can just interact with each other and ask the questions regarding the deliberations which have been given by Professor Kass in a very lucid manner. And I think in the small time, he has taught us the skill of breaking the chain of pain. It's so simple. It's so simple. We just think that's so big. We just carry our big egos on our head. And we just think that this person has hurt me, I'll hurt him more, more, more. How he dared to say this, how he behaved in that manner. So we just create a cycle of pain, chain of pain, and just move around this, and the life becomes bogged. We just live in that world of pain. But a small gesture can bring break out this chain of pain. As just Professor Kass has shared, he is a multifaceted personality. I must say that he can knowledgeable person. He is a psychotherapist, counselor, and he sings so well and plays the instrument. So, and I still remember his exercise of peacock feather. And I just appreciate and just I share with my students a wonderful thing of teaching and breaking the chain of pain, I must say. If we learn to balance the peacock feather on the fingertip and just move our body in that direction, we can just understand that by moving in the flow of the events, we can just break the chain of pain, because life offers so many opportunities, but we are bogged with so many things. We live life mindlessly. We just don't focus on the things which are going around us, the novelty and creativity which is outside, and the opportunities which can we can grab for creating the breaking the chain of pain. So I'm really overwhelmed, and I would like participants to please come forward and say few things. If you have formed a group, small group, 2-3 people who may interact, and I would request the teachers from Department of Psychology, Dr. Manini, Dr. Megha, Dr. Lalit, and our subject experts, Dr. Kirti, Dr. Usha Chaudhary, and many subject experts who are also there, many PDFs or research scholars are there. They can form a small group and interact with us. And we have our RERF faculty with us, Mr. Shobit Narayan, and few of his colleagues are also there. If they can form a small group and interact, I think we can learn a lot from our interactions. So it's a platform, we can share our experiences. If you want to say something, you can put in the chat box.
Excuse me, ma'am. There is one question in chat box asked
Yes.
by Dr. Usha Chaudhary.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Sir, she asked, happiness is found in meditation, but what to do if the mind wanders while sitting in meditation?
This is a
Well, that's the central question, isn't it? Because all of our minds wander. And of course, the challenge and the skill is to work on that. So I'm going to be kind of perhaps counterintuitive and say that one of the things that I have learned to do is when my mind is wandering, to stop meditating and to write down what those wandering thoughts are. Because to know myself, I need to know where my mind wanders to. And when I start to understand where my mind wanders to, oftentimes I discover which areas of those 5 dimensions, behavioral, so, which areas are most dominant for me in terms of my thoughts and my worries and my concerns. And of course, the mind naturally is made to think about the future and the past. That's again part of the wonderful resources that evolution, Devi Ma, has built into us. Our minds are meant to think. But once we start to learn where we're wandering to and what it's about, and what kind of self-inquiry, what kind of healing do we need to do to help those, so that I can finally say, oh, there you go again, mind. But for a moment, I can now take those thoughts and put them aside. And when we reach that place of actually being able to take those thoughts and put them aside, because they're real, they're about real things, but put them aside, then we can go into our own next level of being, of next level of awareness. So thank you so much for asking that absolutely essential question, because it gets to the heart of the process of self-inquiry, and it gets to the heart of what's so difficult about breaking the chain of pain, because all of us are living with our busy minds, concerned about very real things. I'm not making fun of, I never should make fun, be mocking of what our minds think about. our minds think about the things that are most concerning to us, most troubling to us. They're filled with the memories of trauma and pain. They're filled with the worries about the future. So we need to be absolutely respectful of our thoughts, but understand that they are part of the inherited cycle of the chain of pain. And there's a way to work to heal them, and then a way to set them aside so that we can go deeper into our awareness and experience more of our core self. So again, thank you. That's just, if
Thank
there
you
was
so much,
one-
sir.
There is
Wonderful.
another question by Dr. Sushil Rohiwal. There are many schools of meditation, but whom to follow? Like heartfulness, Riksha Dhyan, or Brahma Kumari, Sahaj Yog. So there are many systems. So whom to follow?
Well, that's a very important question. And I'm going to answer it in two kinds of ways. First, I will say that I have a great deal of respect for the Brahma Kumaris. And I know that the Brahma Kumaris have been contributing a great deal to the work at KGMU and to the work at Lucknow, University of Lucknow, in the Department of Psychology. And I think it's wonderful that you're incorporating the ideas and the practices of the Brahma Kumaris, because they're so healthy and so, and so important. But other schools are also healthy and important. And now I'm going to say something purposefully controversial. Every one of the systems, and now I'm including the Brahma Kumaris, can develop social dominance hierarchies, can develop positionality and power where it's more important to be the leader or a very important person in the group and to have one's, in quotes, disciples in subordinate roles. That's a human tendency of social systems. And so when we talk about what school to follow, my advice is that when you go to a school or you go to a particular type of meditation teacher or teachings or program, check out the social dominance hierarchies that you're experiencing. It's a little, so I'll say, I'll make fun of this. Is it all run by white men? Is it all run by men? Is it, in fact, a system where somebody always sits so high above? It's okay. Of course, there are gurus, there are enlightened beings. We know that, we know through the culture of India that there have been and are enlightened beings. We know that's true in the Buddhist tradition, in the Hindu tradition, but it's true in the Christian tradition. It's true in the Muslim tradition. It's true in the Jewish tradition. It's true in the indigenous peoples' traditions. There are people with great enlightenment, with spiritual insight and spiritual power. And yet we still have to look at how in modern times we organize those systems, because the guru-disciple relationship can be a very important relationship that truly cultivates psychospiritual maturation, or it can become another form of social dominance hierarchy where people are simply serving the system. So my advice to that was complicated, because a way of saying that the first thing is how to choose a system is evaluate it. Check in about it. Talk to other people about it. Don't just do it alone. Go with a friend, go with a loved one, and evaluate whether the system actually helps people to develop confidence in life and confidence in self, whether it helps them to have their own internal locus of existential meaning making. And if that system therefore operates with the kind of humility and equality that we're talking about here, then it becomes a safe tradition to talk about, to investigate. But now I'm going to say one last thing meant to be even more controversial, but I hope you'll just enjoy the fun of it. When you're a social scientist like me, you realize that the differences between the different schools are minimal compared to the important similarities.
Please
Because-
mute your mic. Somebody, mic is not mute.
I think it's
Whose mic is not mute?
Tasmia, I think. Tasmia. Well, I'll try and say that that when you think from a point of view of a social scientist, please read about meditation in the book on psycho-spiritual maturation. You'll see that there are layers, levels of consciousness that all of the tradition, all the schools teach about. And we could start to talk as social scientists, where I could say to Shobit here, who Agarwal, who's you know, was present in my gallery and a wonderful presence in your programs. I could say, yes, what's taught by the Brahma Kumaris is the same as what's taught in the Christian traditions, in the Muslim traditions, in all of the traditions, when we look for the fundamentals. So let's understand the fundamentals. And when a program or a teacher is teaching the basic fundamentals in a healthy kind of way, they won't say, oh, don't go to that other school. They'll allow you to explore any of the schools that are being helpful, because we're teaching the same fundamentals together. So thank you for that question too. And I hope that, I know I'm going in several different directions, but I hope that's a healthy, correct way, useful way rather, to kind of to approach these issues. Madhurima, you're muted now.
There is a chat by Samya Bagel. She says, my takeaway from this session is suffering as a curriculum.
Oh, that's a wonderful takeaway. And I thank you for reinforcing it. What a powerful, powerful way to say it. And, and it's so important to think of suffering as our curriculum. And again, rather than as a punishment. Because, and that's where I kind of spoke about the idea of collective karma rather than individual karma. Sometimes in schools that use karma as a philosophical term, we get ourselves into difficult water because, if I'm suffering, I must have done something to cause that. Well, we've learned in behavioral medicine, when we were teaching people about meditation as a way to heal from cancer, that some people were saying, well, the cancer is beating me. I'm not healing. It must be that I'm not a good enough person. It must be that I didn't meditate well enough. Wrong. What a sad way to turn these ideas against yourself. Because we all die. We all succumb to some illness at some point. Something. And so not to say, oh, it must be that, in a past lifetime, I must have done something truly terrible, when half of the time, the things that we're suffering are because of the oppression of group social dominance hierarchies. We're in it together. Caste systems, poverty, lack of education. These are collective karmas that cause most of our illnesses, most of our problems. So thank you to say that suffering should be our curriculum individually, but collectively as a social system to learn. Thank you very much.
And one more question is there, by Dr. Neharshi Srivastav. She says, why does grief hurt so much, and will we ever be able to overcome it? Give us some tips to overcome it, especially during this pandemic.
And grief is what you said. Why is grief?
Yeah, grief. Why grief?
No, thank you. Well, I will say this pandemic has been awful. It's been a challenge to me. It's been a challenge to my family. And I will share that the suffering and the fear that it has caused me and my family is such that you really weep sometimes at night for what people are experiencing. And I've lost people. We've lost students, lost patients, lost family members. So the first thing that I want to say is that even you mentioning this, I want to say back, I'm grieving with you, just as we're all grieving with each other. Loss of loved ones. What could be more painful? Foolish to say spiritual philosophy teaches us to be detached. That's a different level of understanding. We want attachment, we need attachment, and when we lose those we love, it's tremendously painful. So what I hope and what's been most important for me is to be with other people with whom I could grieve together and not try to suppress the grieving, but instead to step into the grieving and be together so that we weep away our grief and weep away our tears until finally there's a day when we can again feel the embracing presence of Devi Ma and know that those who are lost are actually, of course, still alive, still present to us, still present. But I'll also say that COVID also reflects the social dominance hierarchies. It reflects our collective karma. The responses that our governments made, and I'm including the United States government, early in the pandemic, to not take it seriously enough, to not treat people well, shows the way our social systems can fail us. The fact that none of our governments give enough support to our healthcare systems and instead favor profit-making corporations rather than our healthcare systems. That's collective karma that we have to change. So part of my grief brings me to want to help to change the system and to say, why are we so lost in chasing after money rather than chasing after connection and love? So let our grief bring us to be active participants in building human community and sanctuary for each other. So thank you for that question too.
Okay. Sir, one more question is there from Soumya Hajela. She asked, liberating our mind or controlling emotions, which one is better for sustainable mental peace?
It's a great question. This is such a sophisticated group. This is just such sophisticated thinking around these really important connections and important ideas. So I'll say that suppressing emotions and thoughts, it's a skill that we sometimes need. There are moments when you need to kind of just, no, don't feel it now, feel it later. You know, so that too is a skill that we need. But to live a whole life suppressing our emotions, suppressing our thoughts, rather than as Rakesh Kumar Tirupati, said, let's look at our wandering minds. Let's understand it's okay. Let's look at all of that. Let's not suppress it. Let's understand that our minds are a reflection of our own links in the chain of pain and heal them. So to suppress for a whole lifetime won't lead to liberation of the mind. Liberation of the mind comes through leaning into the actual process of psychospiritual maturation, where we allow ourselves to know ourselves, to heal ourselves, to grow ourselves from the inside out. So thank you for that wonderful question, because so often meditation is taught as suppression of thoughts and feelings. So thank you.
Sir, there's one question from the student groups. Sir, during this pandemic, I saw many of us get distracted from our class tasks or from completing assignments, experiencing lack of motivation or concentration. So how can we stay focused in such a situation?
Thank you for that question, because I will tell you that I've had many students say the same thing to me, that it's been very difficult to be so isolated. It's been very, very difficult to maintain enough focus to complete assignments, and it becomes very, very stressful. And the first response that I want to give you is not to you as a student, but to your teachers, because I had to realize that in COVID, I needed to be a different kind of teacher. I needed students to be able to tell me, I'm having trouble concentrating. Here's what's going on. They needed my help. We needed to build community. And so instead of simply saying to students, you've got a problem there, get it together, we had extra meetings, we had small groups, we helped students to work together. And that's part of what I did, is I helped students to make small groups so that instead of completing individual assignments, they could work even online with friends and work together. And then they said, oh my God, that won't prove that I know this material. And I said, that's wrong. When you work together as a small group, you all learn the material. I'm happy to say this small group passed with flying colors. And I know that that means that each of you learn. So the first thing I'm doing is talking, of course, to the teachers, but to the students themselves. Part of what I've learned is that the practices that we're talking about are helpful, because in a day where you're isolated by yourself, it's good to wake up in the morning. And if I can just say it this way, very simply, to say, good morning, day. Good morning, life. Here I am again. Here you are again. And to practice some deep breathing. And maybe practice a little bit of hatha yoga. And to ground yourself. And then to sort of sit down and say, what are some of the things that I need to do today? And to make sure that part of that time during the day is communicating with friends and loved ones, staying connected, not getting isolated. And at the end of the day, to reflect for a moment, to say, I let go of this day. I welcome this night of sleep. I hope to restore myself through sleep, and let me reflect on how things went today. Where were the places where I lost focus? Where were the places where I kept focus? And to use it as a curriculum for your own learning and development. A failure, use it curriculum for your own development.
Sir, please mute yourself. Sir, one more. Sulakshana is asking, why do some people, when faced with setbacks, become more?
I apologize. I couldn't hear that clearly.
Please mute your mics. Why do some people, when faced with setbacks, become more spiritual and some go in opposite direction? Why some people, when faced with setbacks, become more spiritual, very spiritual, and some go in opposite direction?
Okay, am I unmuted? Can you hear me now? Let me first compliment you on this question, because really you're making a very important statement. Then when faced with difficulties, some people collapse into resignation or despair, and other people are able to help their challenges to grow more spiritually, more psychospiritually. And it's a very, very important observation that you're making, that crises can either send us backwards or help us to move forwards. Why that is, I suspect, is connected to that individual's chain of pain and the ways that they're learning to free themselves from the chain of pain. And so to those who we love and know who seem to face challenges by collapsing, sometimes what they need is love and guidance to say, you know, I begin to see this pattern in you. And I know it's because of your own despair, and I know it's because of your own confusion, but there are ways to break the chain of pain and to view your difficulties as, in fact, challenges for psychospiritual growth. So why not seek some guidance? Why not seek a counselor? Why not find someone who can help you to look at those responses and use them in sort of more effective ways? But we need to say those very lovingly, not critically. What's the matter with you? Why don't you go get a counselor? That does not help. It's, I feel your pain. I feel what happens to you when you face a challenge. But there are things that we can learn. And oftentimes it's through psychospiritual growth. So let me recommend that you seek someone who can help you in your psychospiritual growth. So good, thank you. Again, it's a great
So one
question.
last question by Dr. Shamsi Akbar is asking, sir, I'm trying to meditate but not able to concentrate. How can I do it?
Yes, well, I think that should be, that is an important statement for all of us to hear and understand, because Lord knows the same thing happens to me so often. I sit down to meditate and I can't concentrate. And again, rather than thinking that that's a failure, what that's telling me is that my thoughts have a lot going on. And so I stop, I'm going back to what I said earlier, and I stop and take out my self-inquiry journal, and I write down what's interrupting it. So let me at least understand what the difficulties are. That kind of mindful awareness is the step towards being able to concentrate better. But I will say one last thing, that sometimes music helps. So sometimes before I sit down to meditate, I put on some music, or I take out my guitar. Asato masat gamaya, tamaso majyotir gamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, asato masat gamaya, tamaso majyotir gamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. I calm my mind with singing. So take some music, take some spiritual music that moves your heart, that you resonate with, and listen to it for a while and sing along with one of the prayers. And you'll notice that it will settle your mind down in a different way. I very rarely can just be busy all day, sit down to meditate. I need music. movement in between to help me to sort of shift that energy. And of course, Asato is such an important prayer, but again, it's not just simply saying, Devi Ma, remove my ignorance, just do a miracle on me. It's Devi Ma, give me the wisdom to grow spiritually. Give me the strength to grow psycho-spiritually, so that from the inside out, I can remove my ignorance. From the inside out, I can shift to understanding the real that's hidden within the unreal. So I hope that helps too. Music.
Thank you, sir, for wonderfully answering the questions of our participants. And they are continuously posting in the chat box. It's a wonderful session. They are especially liking your sense of music and the way you sing the songs. And we are feeling that much energized by listening your music. So it's a wonderful, sir. So over to you, Dr. Manini. Please proceed further. Dr. Manini, are you listening to me? I think she has left. Now I would request.
Dr. Manini Srivastava?
Yeah.
She's here, but you're muted. Manini,
Okay.
you're muted.
Manini, Dr. Manini, are you listening to me? But she can unmute herself on her own.
I think she's sending a signal, so I think she's asking to get unmuted.
She can unmute herself. Dr. Malini.
There she is. Okay.
Please carry on. Now you
Sir,
are done.
I'm speechless, and I have no words to explain what I'm feeling at the moment. And so I can just say that, yes, I'm feeling that, yes, I'm already treading on the path of enlightenment that you have showed today. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. So, take the session forward. I request Dr. Rakesh Kumar Tripathi, sir, to please give the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Marani, and namaskar to all the dignitaries present on the dais, virtual dais, and all the participants. I am here for the valedictory session on behalf of Professor Shrikant Srivastav, Head Department of Geriatric Mental Health. Sir, I have listened you second time. This was a wonderful, amazing workshop on psycho-spiritual maturation. We again learned the 5 dimensions of self and social systems which you have taught us about biobehavioral, cognitive socio-cultural, social and emotional, existential and spiritual, and integrative worldview formation. Yes, sir. And you described how we can assess by self-inquiry that we are going to the chain of pain. So, sir, thank you very much for enlightening us on this domain. I want to connect this domain to our ancient Granth, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In Srimad Bhagavad Gita, there are 18 chapters. And in each chapter, there is a relation with your topic. Like, if we talk about the chapter first, Arjuna Visad Yoga. In this chapter, 3 components are involved if we read it. That is biobehavioral aspect, where Arjuna has depressive symptoms, where biological and behavioral symptoms is involved. Social emotional aspect, where he is not wanting to fight with her kith and kins, and the cognitive and socio-cultural domain in which he has negative cognition. Then chapter 1 these three components are there. And if you go to the chapter 13, that is Kshetra Kshetragya Vibhag Yoga, means realm and knowing realm department, in which existential and spiritual aspect of an individual and supreme power and God is described. And your fifth component, integrative worldview formation, is dealt in the Vishwarup Darshan Yoga, that is chapter 11. Vishwarup Darshan Yoga means yoga of the universe visit, which Sri Krishna show to the Arjun, अपना पूरा रूप दिखाया. And in all these aspects, there is one sixth chapter dealt with the Atma Sansay Yoga. That is yoga of self-restraint and control through meditation and other things is dealt with there. And what you it just very importantly deliberate that which is important, mind regulation or emotion regulation. And in that way, you have very rightly said that the mind regulation is the first which is need to be addressed. And when I am like to recite one slok from Sri Bhagavad Gita related with the topic, that dhyayato visyan punsah sangaste supajayate sangatsa samjayate kamah कामात क्रोधो अभिजायते, कि विषयों का चिंतन करने वाले पुरुष की उन विषयों में आसक्ति हो जाती है, आसक्ति से उन विषयों की कामना उत्पन्न होती है, और कामना में विघ्न पढ़ने से क्रोध उत्पन्न होता है. मीन्स if a person thinks about something, about some subjects, he indulges with it, and after indulgence in that subject, he desires to achieve that thing, and obstruction in fulfillment of desired thing, it produces anger. So this was the one slok from Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And sir, I also recommend that participants must read Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And of course, your course of psycho-spiritual maturation is wonderful, in which the improvement is soon more than 50% in the adolescent population. That it is a very good finding. But in spiritual aspect, there is below 50% response, because in adolescent spirituality developed after aging, after 45 years, 40 years after age. So that's why it was not be possible on that result. But sir, we have learned a lot, and we wish all the organizers congratulations to organize such a wonderful workshop. And I invite Professor Madhuni Pradhan, ma'am, please give the concluding remarks.
Thank you very much.
Please, ma'am, unmute yourself.
So my takeaway from this workshop is aligned with my belief that we have to create positive energy all around, and what we create through our thoughts and behavior comes back to us, because thought has energy. And once again, it has been validated by Professor Kass' statement that we have to break the chain of pain. So this is the key for our own well-being, personal well-being, as well as the well-being of our society. And whatever we believe, our Indian vision of collectiveness, of Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, we have that moral standard, but we find that in our society, still people are struggling within their own self. They are not able to understand what is going on in their lives and how their life is being destroyed, what is happening outside, the moral values, why they are being so much erosion of values, why the people, the young students, young people are committing suicides, why there is so much chain of pain. We are just, whenever we open the newspaper in the morning, we can see the events of so many problems in the society, death, murder, suicide, and robbery. So why all this? So we have to work together to break this chain of pain. And we want to start this journey, we have to start from within our own self, because we cannot blame other person that that person is not breaking the chain of pain. I'm breaking my chain. So we have stopped this blame game. We have to put our finger within our own self. If we take the responsibility of our own self, then the society will change. I say that the vision Professor Kass has given us is very much aligned with our Indian vision of Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. So this vision will be successful if we follow the path of psycho-spiritual maturation. And I would love to read this book, sir, due to my busy schedule. And since I had been the head of the department since past 3 years, so I could not read this book, but it is there. I'm very much, it's in the my library, and the first book I would read is your book. I'll definitely read it out. And I would have learned a lot from your workshop, sir. Thank you so much. So over to you, Dr. Manini.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Rakesh, sir. And sir, one thing is for sure, that we are going to disturb you from time to time. And so you be prepared for that. And now I would just like to invite
Dr. Manini, I would request you to organize such a workshop from time to time from Happy Thinking Laboratory. It's not it's just a beginning. I just said in my like it is just a beginning, and we'd invite Sarkars from time to time and address our students and teachers as well. Thank you so much.
I'll be proud to do that. And now I invite Dr. Lalit Kumar Singh, who is also a faculty member of the Department of Psychology, University of Lucknow, to give a vote of thanks to sir. And though, sir, we are falling short of words, but still we would like to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Mani, for giving me this opportunity to pass the vote of thanks. And I will start from a very famous statement of a very renowned philosopher of his own time, J. Krishnamurti. And he has been a very known person to many of the existentialists, many of the people who want to explore themselves. And he used to give lectures to the people, and he has spent his lot of time in European countries. So he said, and he used to say to the people that words cannot carry the potential of truth, because truth is something very dynamic. Truth is something so powerful that words cannot hold it. And there have been lots of questions asked in this event and workshop, and words have been used to answer them. But if you go by the truthness of Jaddu Krishnamurti, we have to remember that words can carry over some meaning, can take you to some extent, but last and final step will have to be taken by you only. So you will have to go to the journey to find the truth. You will have to go to the process of knowing the truth. You don't have to see the Buddha in making, but you will have to be Buddha for yourself. And no doubt, sir, this your workshop has been a very influential, eye-opener, and has established a new benchmark for lots of people presented in this event. And it again reminds us that Indian scripture is still has the courage, potential, and stamina to influence lots of people. And we should your this presentation and workshop again reminds us that we need to go back to our roots. So I really want to say thank you for enlightening us with your power, with your knowledge, with your passion and spirit. We will look forward to have you more in our coming future. And I will, my nature of my job, for example, passing the vote of thanks has become quite, for most of the people, boring kind of thing, because I have to express my gratitude for all the people, and I have to just say thanks, and thanks, which I will be doing. But I have to start from somewhere. So I will start, and I give my vote of thanks to my convener of this workshop, Professor Madhurima Pradhan Madam, who took the initiative and organized such a needed workshop in today's scenario, because all humanity is going through a problem, and we really needed such an eye-opener and a sparkling event which can ignite our thirst to look for the truth and look for the dimension of our truth and self. So I really want to say thank you, madam. I want to really say thank you to our coordinator, Professor Shukla Madam. Shukla Madam has been very much in contributing and pivotal center for our efforts. He has always appreciated our efforts. So I really want to say thank you, Madam. I really want to say thank you to Dr. Manini Madam, Dr. Megha Madam, and all the department staff, including our research scholar, Dr. Kirti Madam, our guest faculties, Dr. Usha Madam, and Malvika Madam, and all our postgraduate students who have been very much helpful since throughout when we launched this idea. They always have been with us to make this event a successful journey. So I really want to say thanks from bottom of my heart. My words will be limited. My words will be incomplete if I ignore our constant spirit of motivation, which comes from KGMU Medical College. I really want to say thank you to Dr. Nisha Mani Madam. I really want to say thank you to Professor Dr. Rakesh Tripathi ji, who's always very cherishing, very powerful. He's a powerhouse of energy. He always contributes in a very influential manner to the audience. I have listened him many times. So I really want to say thank you, you both, madam and sir, that you came forward, saved your time, and shared your understanding with us. And because of your contribution, we have been able to make it a successful journey, which is just a beginning. We'll have more in our future. And I really want to say thank you to all the team member who has been from KGMU. For example, Farhan ji has helped us in digitally sharing our ideas to rest of the people via YouTube channel, and all the people. I really and my words are also for those all participants who came, who attended, who participated, and developed their own understanding in this journey, self-exploration and psycho-spiritual training and psycho-spiritual maturation, which is really a very influential lesson for all of us. And in the last, I would really would like to say thank you to you, sir. Your spirit has always been a motivating factor. It energizes us the moment we heard your name. So we were very much happy that we would be having you second time in our university. But sir, I will request you to make a promise with us that each time we request you to be with us, you will be here, sir, because we need you. We need your presence. We need your charisma. And this is our expectation from you always, sir. And I would really I would say to excuse me if I unknowingly omit certain names. And on the behalf of Department of Psychology, on the behalf of KGMU Medical College, I really say thanks to all the participants, all the person, all the spirits, all the God souls who came, attended, and made this event a success. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a great honor and pleasure to be with you today, and such wonderful depth of response. It just touches me deeply to have this chance. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you,
again
sir.
to Rad and Dr. Pandey.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. We have no words
Thank
to
you,
say.
sir. Thank you very
We
much.
don't
Thank
have
you,
any
sir.
words, sir. It is really very nice. And I think today we will go and sleep, have a deep sleep without, and we can break our chain of pain. Definitely,
Nishamani madam, excuse me for disturbing you in between. I am left with one more name. I really want to say thank you to my Dean Academics, Professor
yes.
Rakesh Chandra sir, who came and shared their understanding and provided their motivation for us to carry on this journey. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you once again, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
we'll
you
meet
very
again.
much.
Thank you very
Thank
much. Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you, sir.
Namaskar. Namaskar. Mr. Farhan, please call me and